Most of my playing experience has been Dungeons and Dragons. However, I did play a lot of games as a kid. Star Frontiers, it's a very little heard of science fiction role-playing game. Played that for a while. I also played Vampire the Masquerade and those kind of little horror, little role-playing games. I even tried a cartoon role-playing game called Toon way back when I was a kid. That was a fun game. You could have anvils just fall out of the sky on your friends. One time I had an idea and a light bulb popped up above my head, which lit the way for me and my party members. Obviously, I love Dungeons and Dragons, the first and second edition. I do, however, like Pathfinder. I like Call of Cthulhu. I even like the Star Wars role-playing games. They have a lot of different editions, but the newer one I like the best. I, of course, like the Zelda series. All those games were great, especially growing up when the first Zelda came out, when the graphics are horrible, the soundtrack is terrible, but the gameplay was excellent. I like Diablo, Diablo 2, Blood Omen, Legacy of Kain, one of my personal favorites, one of the most difficult games ever in the history of video games. You cannot win unless you cheat. Also, I like street fighting games, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter 2. I like Hero Quest. They don't produce it anymore. That was probably the early 90s, maybe late 80s. It was a game where you play co-op with a group of friends and fight the bad guys. Every game was different, so that makes it more exciting. I don't like Monopoly. Can't stand Mousetrap. Even Operation sucks. I do, however, like chess. Also. I'm not a big card game fan. I am looking forward to Card Quest, which should be out pretty soon. That's the type of card game I would love to play. I really had no interest in playing D&D. Fuck you. I like playing D&D because it's an escape. It's kind of like a drug-free high for me. Especially as a kid, beer was limited. There was no opium. There was no acid. It was out there, but I was 8 years old. How am I going to find it? So I decided to get involved in this game because it's like a dream inside my head. Kind of like watching a great TV show or reading a good book. Everything takes place in my mind, and that's where I spent most of my time anyway. Between basketball, baseball, Little League, I was a pitcher, kickball, tag, all the childhood games, I was tired. I was always a pudgy little kid, so I could not run for 12 hours straight. Eventually, we settled in my friend's living room, and his older brother brought over the Dungeons and Dragons books and a couple of his friends. And since I had nothing else to do, I started playing with them. D&D to me is a release. It's an escape. It's a way to get away from the world without having to go anywhere. If you spend $10 to watch an hour and a half movie, why would you not play D&D for 2 or 3 hours and not pay a dime? I like the mystery, the action, and the adventure of Dungeons and Dragons. I like the fantasy world settings. I like to be able to use magic and have it affect how my day goes. If I could use magic at work, I would turn everyone into a frog and step on them. How long have I played D&D? I've been playing D&D off and on for about 31 years. Do I prepare anything before playing? The obvious answer is no. There's no way I will ever prepare anything. As a dungeon master, I might be the only exception to the rule. A lot of DMs they'll play a module, they'll write things down, they'll go according to what they have written down, as though it's written in stone. I do everything on the fly. Everything comes out of my butt without a moment's notice. It's free flowing all night long. That's probably the only way I could run a Guild of Fools gaming session, because I have no idea what the viewers have in mind, and have no idea when they're going to spend a god point to change something that I just made or created. D20 systems, D6 systems, percentage-based systems. I like the D20 systems best. I'm used to rolling a D20. I remember playing the old Star Wars games when they had 75 different six-sided dice on the table. I'm not one for math, so I don't like to add up 75 different dice. So I never really caught on. Since they switched to the D20 system, it's easier for me. As far as first edition, second edition D&D, well, I've been playing since before they even had advanced Dungeons & Dragons. This is when they had the color-coded playing guides, where if you're first to third level, you use the red book. If you're fifth to seventh level, you use a blue book, and that was very basic. So I like the advanced options that came out with the advanced D&D. The second edition added a little bit more. They got rid of a few of my favorite classes. They destroyed the monk class. The cavalier class disappeared completely. The barbarian just became a fighter who couldn't talk and wielded a spear. There's no thief acrobat in the second edition either. But the second edition did come out with the non-weapon proficiencies. Their skills related to the newer games, but they're specific to the character class, and it is a lot better to customize your character. It takes time. One of my pet peeves are DMs who start everyone at like 10th level. You miss out on all the development of the character. You have no personality. You're just a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper. The 3.5 and the 3.0, well, let's face it, 3.0 was a joke. 3.5 is still broken, and they made it so that all their fans had to buy over 200 books to be able to play the game. And I like when Pathfinder came out, because it balanced out 3.5, and what I've played, we have one book. All the information you need to play a serious Pathfinder adventure game is in that one book, so you don't have to go out and buy 7,000 books. For 4th edition D&D, it's simply a video game in tabletop form. I realize that the younger generation is more familiar with video games, and so it's easier for them to translate over to 4th edition. I don't like it very much, simply because they did get rid of all the role-playing aspects. All the spells, all the skills, all the daily powers, at-will powers, and counter powers are geared for just combat. So there's really no role-playing involved at all. The Call of Cthulhu game setting is neat because it's the horror aspect. It's a challenge for the players to not die and not go insane, and that's very difficult in that game world. As if I'm running it as the game master, it's a challenge to keep the atmosphere going. You want the dark, dreary atmosphere where the mood is downright evil and psychotic. And I hope I pull that off well enough that everyone stays entertained, even though their character is destined to die. When I was in high school, junior or senior year, something like that, I was somewhat of a traveling dungeon master. There was maybe a dozen different groups of guys that never actually got together at one time, but they all wanted to play D&D. And since I got along with everybody in school, I said, yeah, sure, I'll DM for you. And I remember one night, I went over to a friend's house. there were probably about 5 or 6 of us. They wanted to play all night. So we started sometime around 10 p.m. And one of the guys brought an entire garbage bag, I believe it was, full of weed. And we were in his basement with no ventilation. So by around 1 o'clock, I had such a contact buzz going on that I forgot I was DMing. It really didn't turn out very well, and we didn't make it all night. It was sometime around 1:10, 1:15, we had to stop, simply because nobody was focused enough on the game to be able to play. As far as being drunk, I have had a few beers once or twice. I never got totally thrashed, so I was never actually drunk. Sleep deprived, that's just about every night. Hopefully, if I get to take a nap before we play, otherwise I'm not as quick-witted as I'd like to be. House rules are very important. I would say essential to my game, at least. Now, there was a lot of times where I would go by the books, maybe the first few months as a dungeon master. But the books are only there for reference. In fact, it actually says it somewhere in the books that nothing is permanent. You can adjust anything you have to make it fit the situation. Well, I took that to a higher level. The house rules that I have for the Guild of Fools are somewhat cutthroat and downright evil. For example, the double 20 rule. Now, in the newer games, you roll a natural 20 on a 20-sided roll, you do double damage. In my world, you hit with a natural 20, but you get to roll a second one. There is the potential to do double damage. There's also the potential to do no damage at all. Now, it's a no-brainer for the Guild of Fools. I have to use house rules. Because, 1, it adds a lot to the game, and 2, it could make a simple situation turn into a disaster for the players. I used to use book rules a lot. There was a gentleman who was playing, and he had memorized the monster manual for first edition D&D. This is actually before the second edition came out. But he had actually memorized every monster's weakness, every monster's strength, all the hit points for the monsters. And so anytime I would throw a monster at this group, he would know everything about this monster. For example, a troll. A troll's weakness is fire. A troll regenerates, but fire damage cannot be regenerated by a troll. Well, one evening I threw a wrench in his works by making a fire troll. A troll that actually breathed fire. So he was immune to the effects of fire. It totally stumped this guy, and he had no idea what to do. Obviously, pour some water on him, but he was so set in his ways that he could not comprehend the fact that this monster came not from the book, but from my imagination. And since then, I've added a lot of house rules. I have, in my world right now, I have the wild magic areas. They're also dead magic zones. But every time a wizard or a cleric casts a spell, there is a chance that it could go horribly wrong, and it could damage themselves or the party. But in the same sense, the first level wizard who is basically clinging to life and hiding behind other party members has a chance to become the hero for a night. Well, there are a couple minor issues that I don't like about it. Mostly, I'm gonna have to say the players make the game. If the players are lousy, then I feel as though I'm holding their hands way too much, and I don't like leading a party in any direction. It is an open-ended game, and since anything is possible, I should in no way influence the party in any way at all. If the players are sleepy and tired, then it's going to drain my energy a lot more. But on the other hand, if they are lively and playing well, I feed off their energy, and I can come up with a lot of things that I never would even think of before I sat down for the night. But what I really don't like about it is that I don't have enough dice. That's pretty much it. on camera as a dungeon master, it's a little bit difficult. It's a little bit frightening. It could be intimidating at first. I mean, I'm used to playing in front of the same group of people, the same bunch of guys, and everything I do is pretty much normal, I would say. Being on camera, however, I feel as though I have to always raise the bar, always up the ante. And now, if I bring up something that I've done 20 years ago, the people on camera aren't going to have a clue that I did it. I mean, I'll feel bad because I've been trying ever since I started dungeon mastering to not ever duplicate something that I've already done. I try to do something different every night. I've had the dragon invasions, the aliens, the natural disasters, the world ending in 17 different flavors and colors. But I personally try not to do it over again. And being on camera, I don't know how I look. And no one likes the sound of their own voice, so I never really go back and look at anything that I've done. I guess I'm doing a good enough job that people keep coming back, and I hope they continue to come back and watch me. And I'm always able to play an old school type game without cameras anytime. That sounded silly. Oh, fuck it. I've had a lot of good experiences playing D&D and playing other games. But one of my favorite moments, one that sticks out, was I was told that I had to have a high-level character to fit into this campaign that some guy was running. And as a dungeon master, I don't have any high-level characters. I have one or two here and there, but this was a whole new campaign. I wanted to fit in. So I, off the top of my head, created a 10th level first edition Barbarian. Now, if you're familiar with the first edition Barbarian, it is one of the most powerful characters to start off. Reaching 10th level as a Barbarian is equivalent to being like a 15th level regular fighter. So I made up this Barbarian. His name was Deathwish the Untamed. And I took him over to play at this table with a bunch of strangers. And I sat down, and there were about 9 of us. It was a pretty big table. The other players, we introduced ourselves, etc., etc. And the first encounter we had was hobgoblins. There was a camp of hobgoblins, and I was, as a 10th level character, I was the lowest level character at the table, and I was a barbarian. So I kept with the true barbarian form, and I had 0 magic items. The guy on my right was a I don't know, 15th level paladin or something. He brought out a notebook full of magic items. Of course, they were all held in various bags of holding and everything. But while he's going through his 79 to 1,000 magic items, I simply charged the hobgoblins, killed the entire camp, and then when the paladin came down to mop up my mess, I killed him too. And that was it was a nice moment in Dungeons and Dragons history. Now, one of the strangest moments that I had as a player, I was invited to another group, and this guy had a nice setup. He had a huge table. He had walls full of books. Every Dragon magazine, every Dungeon magazine issue for the last 20 years or so. He was sitting at the head of the table. He was the president of his own gaming company, role-playing game company. And he was playing a dwarf. I sat down at the table playing a jester. Yes, a 2nd edition rogue jester. It's a bard class. And I sat down and just started making fun of half the table. Immediately, half the table loved me. The other half hated me. I had one guy who wanted to kill me, and I had his fiancée stepping between us. And that was kind of weird, I thought. But the strangest part about that was I had lent the Dungeon Master at the time a list of cards. It was a card set. It was encounter cards. And he would just flip through it, and he pulled out a card, and he read the effect of this card. And this encounter called for the party's magic items to be swept away because someone on the other side of the world had wished for them. And the president of this tabletop gaming company lost his +5 battle axe. Of course, I laughed, being a jester, and made fun of him, and he began to cry. He broke down and he cried. We had to take a break. Everyone had to go outside of the room while he composed himself. And when we came back in, I made him cry again by making fun of him again. I'm a dick. My worst night ever, I still remember. This was about 9.5 years ago. It was after a November snowstorm. It was a blizzard in November, right around Thanksgiving. And I had lost power, which meant I had lost heat and electricity and lighting. I was playing D&D in the basement at the time, and nobody could make it over except for one guy. So I decided, okay, look, we're here. No one else could show up. I don't have any heat. We might as well play just to pass some time away while I wait for the electrician to come and hook up my electricity. So we played by tea lights in the basement of my house. We were wearing, like, I think 3 blankets, winter coats, gloves, scarves, mittens, whatever. And we played for about 4 hours. By the time we were done, both of us, could not feel our toes, our fingers, or our faces. We had almost frozen to the chairs we were sitting on. He enjoyed playing, and it did take my mind off my problems at the time, so it wasn't a total wash. But if you ever have a problem like that, don't play by tea lights. Just hide under the blankets and stay warm. One of my high-level characters, one that I actually started at first level, was a dark elf. This was before the Doerden series even came out. It's been a while. He was my favorite character. He was triple classed, way overpowered, but he started off as a simple guy. He's an evil, bloodthirsty killer. And he's still alive. I haven't really played him since I started DMing, but he kicked some ass. He had a sword of sharpness and a whip. He would entangle his opponents and slowly dismember them while laughing. The type of character that I normally play is probably the druid, the bard, the simple classes that everyone seems to overlook. I've never been a glory hound. I've never been, one to rush into the battle and just kill everything, except for my barbarian character that I made the night before. But normally, I just like to help out the party and make sure that they're having as much fun as they can, which means usually a bard just to make everyone feel better, or the druid who stays out of all the infighting and goes along with whatever has to be done just for the good of the land. I tend to choose either neutral or good characters. I have had evil characters in the past. If you're running with a group of a party of adventurers, I recommend playing a good character, because as a DM, I know that the stuff that can happen if your party is evil. Try to send any plot influence onto the party, and they simply kill it because they're psychotic. And it's rough for the DM, because I don't plan anything, but I'm sure other DMs do. If they have something in mind and their princess who needs, their damsel in distress or whatever, needs help, and the party just rapes and kills her, it's not going to go anywhere, and you just spend time eating pizza and rolling dice for no apparent reason at all. Any type of character that I like to play but haven't, I'm going to say I just want to play. That's all I want to do. Every DM wants to play every once in a while. Of course, everyone who is a DM likes the power, likes to be in charge. But every once in a while, I just like to sit back and play and enjoy it like it should be played. Just dice and buddies, enjoying a night, hanging out, doing what has to be. I know what you're thinking.
You went homoerotic again.
It just turns out that way.
Just dice.
Just dice and... There haven't really been any characters that I wanted to play and haven't had a chance to. I did have a lot of time to play and try any character that I wanted. But at this point, I simply want to play the game and not have to DM every single time. Because everybody wants to play, and everyone should get the chance. So once again, I'm Andy. Thank you for listening and watching. You can get a hold of me on Facebook or on Twitter, or watch me on the Guild of Fools on Mondays and Friday nights, Eastern Standard Time at 6 p.m. to 10-ish. Or you can visit Amazon.com, grab 1,000 copies of this book, and distribute them to all your friends and young ones. So thank you, and good night.